Welcome to the Tapestry of Life on CCP-TV, the Emmy-nominated educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I am Dr. Pascal Scoles, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services. Today's topic is Forensic Intensive Recovery. The Forensic Intensive Recovery was implemented in the early 1990s. A federal consent decree required the city of Philadelphia to provide community treatment slots for male and female inmates in lieu of incarceration. Substance abuse treatment and recovery support services are now provided to inmates outside of the institution through early parole and re-parole. The Forensic Intensive Recovery Program was established to decrease the inmate population while simultaneously providing community-based substance abuse treatment for eligible inmates. To discuss this topic today, I want to welcome back my co-host Rick Ford from the Department of Behavioral Health and also our special guests, Katherine Harvey, Director of Case Management Program Standards, and Tiffany David, Certified Recovery Specialist. You know, I'll tell you an interesting story as we get started. I remember when the Forensic Intensive Recovery Program actually got started, because at that time I was working in the ARD court with a judge by the name of Norm Jenkins, who was the ARD specialist. And that whole movement of like treatment court, ARD court, DUI court, I thought was a wonderful beginning to moving people out of the prison system. And as you know today, with all the things that are going on, the concept of incarceration and people who have been incarcerated for minor drug and alcohol offenses has taken on tremendous significance. I mean, in the sense of a positive movement. So I was wondering, maybe you could, Kath, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the program. I have a history with your program, knowing Dr. Cohen for many, many years.
Yes.
And I know that the program has expanded extensively in the public health model.
Yes. Public health management was started back in 1972 under the direction of Richard Cohen. What we do is we really look to sustain and create healthy communities through providing support services throughout the city of Philadelphia. The Forensic Service Program, for the model that we came up with to really work with individuals in substance abuse, is just one of 350 programs within Public Health Management Corporation. The FIR program really looks to establish connections with individuals returning back into the community. We really like to call them returning citizens, individuals that have families, support networks, community involvement. So the case managers, the support that we provide allows them the opportunity to really make that connection. I think PHMC is really evolving from the days that you may remember. We used to be called Public Health Management, but now we're Public Health Management.
It used to be called Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, yes, Philadelphia. We really are looking at embracing the integration of public health services with behavioral health. You know, the holistic approach of working with individuals, not just with mental health or substance abuse, but any behavioral health issue. And it's really exciting work. We really like to think we're on the cutting edge to really provide those services to individuals.
I know that before we get really going on this topic in a different way, I do know that Dr. Evans, Arthur Evans, I know that his next 10 years, or the 10 years that we're in now, and I'll defer to Rick, I know that that's the model he now wants to move extensively in, is the integration of behavioral health, mainly addiction and mental health services, into the fabric of public health, which I think is a tremendous activity because it deals a lot with things like harm reduction, which has had a history of positive and negative feelings within the field of recovery. As a general topic, although I'm very supportive of harm reduction. But I think that it has a mixed bag for some people.
One of the things that we're proud of at Public Health Management Corporation is our 5 federally funded health centers throughout the city. It's a way to bring individuals a connection with that health and wellness piece. We have certified doctors. We have case managers that work in the facilities as well. And what's interesting also, we have support groups. So different public health clinics are able to provide different services for the individuals. We really look to focus on integrating, weaving in the tapestry of life, the health and wellness for recovery, regardless of what you're recovering from, whether it's substance abuse, domestic violence, shopping addictions, you know, whatever you're recovering from, we hope to provide you with the resources and the tools and the linkages for that.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the great things when you mentioned Dr. Evans and this whole the transition in his tenure here. Again, this whole thing about public health, personal health, and involving just covering the whole spectrum with folks that are definitely in need of services. When you look at what's going on in the city of Philadelphia with the prison system and recidivism and returning citizens, we're on the forefront of a new era where we're helping people at all levels of life. So I love the whole idea of what Dr. Evans and everybody else in the city that is doing great work. Folks migrate to our city because of the high level of treatment and recovery that we present. So I'm glad to be a part of that too.
I agree, Derrick. One of the things, you know, as far as recovery transformation in the city of Philadelphia, it is alive and well. Derrick, since I've been involved with a lot of the things that you're involved in, Recovery Idol, the Recovery Walk that we have every year, it really shows the passion of those individuals that are recovering, and you're able to see the successes. You know, Tiffany sits here as a success. That's why I do the work that I do. It's about instilling the hope into individuals who come from hopeless situations. And we can see, Derrick can attest to it, Tiffany can attest to it, that there is hope in recovery. So just being a part of this process, we're able to reach one, teach one, and change the world through that. And that's empowering.
Yeah. You know, and when you think about, when I look over the last 10 years, what has been happening here in our city, folks migrate to Philadelphia from all over, Maryland, Chicago, Detroit, whatever city or state, but not only when they get here, they become employable, they get homes and get families and jobs, but they never go back home because of the great work that we do here in the city of Philadelphia. So this whole concept
it's had a tremendous impact on the evolution of the behavioral health program at the college. I mean, if you look at all our coursework now, the coursework is really much more integrated into the recovery transformation movement and the public health stuff, you know, model, as opposed to the traditional, I guess, you know, alcoholic and drug model, which still is here. I'm not arguing that, but we've tried to do that also. He's had a tremendous amount of influence, and I'm happy that he was retained under the new mayor. So,
yeah, indeed.
So we're pleased with all that.
We were happy to hear that our current new mayor realized the importance of keeping the leadership in place that was here in the city of Philadelphia. So,
and I would be remiss if I didn't mention our good friend Roland Lamb, who heads up the addiction side of the equation.
Yes, indeed.
I don't want him to watch this and say, "Yo, Pat," you know, "Yo." Well, you know, part of the reason why we do what we do in the city is really to hear the kind of stories that I heard from you today and that you sent to me, and I want to just say that you're a wonderful person in the sense of where you've come from and where you're going, and you're a perfect example of what the city is all about. Now, I noticed you were at Interim House, and I'll start with that one, because we did a whole show on Interim House, and you know, that program, that women's recovery program, is just a wonderful example of a service that goes to a particular group of individuals in serious need of help.
Yes, they're very supportive of everything, no matter what. It's like an individual-based program, and it's just like the support that you receive from them, you never feel judged, and they're just extremely helpful, and they teach you a lot. Like DBT, we have DBT, and life skills group.
What is that? I mean, I know what it is, but I mean, the
it's
audience.
dialectical behavior therapy. So it's a group, and it teaches you how, it gives you coping skills and how not to act out on your emotions. So instead of when you get angry, instead of screaming and yelling, it's going to teach you how to calm down and then think about it and act in a different way.
Yeah, that dialectical model, if I'm not mistaken, came originally out of a problem drinking experience that people had. So it actually has its roots right within the alcohol and drug program. So, and it is a model that we even talk about in our classes,
Good.
along with a lot of other, you know,
It's helped a lot.
what they call evidence-based
Yeah,
programs
yeah.
that were all like the new buzzword in the last 5 or 7 years is evidence-based.
So, but you know what's interesting, and I think it's important for the viewers. How did you wind up at Interim House?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that that commitment. How did you get into Interim House? Where did you come? Are you from Philadelphia?
I am from Philadelphia.
So let's walk through that movement a little bit.
So I was born in Kensington. Over the years, we moved up to the Northeast, and you know, I didn't have the perfect family, but I don't blame my family for me becoming an addict. I was out of control, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do. My mom was an active alcoholic, so she allowed me to do what I wanted to do. Probably around 13, I started using, and I liked it. So that's how it happened. And, you know, it started off drinking and smoking weed, and then somehow, I couldn't even tell you how, it just progressed into more.
Yeah.
I ended up at Interim House because I was locked up a couple times before I actually ended up at Interim House, and it wasn't my own will that got me there. I was put there because when I was in jail, they offered me treatment court. So at first, it was like I wasn't doing it for myself. I was doing it because I didn't want to go back to jail.
Yeah.
When I think back today, I'm so happy that I ended up in treatment court because
Yes.
that made me accountable to somebody, and that made me stay at Interim House and realize that there was something wrong with the way that I was living, because my life was unmanageable.
So now, you know what, and again, I'm listening to the progression, alcohol, marijuana, and then you wound up doing your favorite drug was what?
Crack cocaine.
You were incarcerated. The behaviors, what was it? Robbing, stealing, prostituting?
Every time I've been locked up, it was because I got caught stealing.
Stealing?
I mean, I've done other things what you do to get high,
Yeah.
obviously, but I've only been locked up for stealing.
Yeah. So you were rescued. You weren't arrested.
Yeah, I was rescued.
In some
and I
terms.
didn't know it at that time,
Yeah.
but yes, I was, yes. And it just amazed me that they finally offered me help, because everybody knew that I needed help. And when I got locked up, I was pregnant with my third child.
Yeah.
So everybody knew that I needed help. It was just I didn't know that I needed help, and I wasn't willing to admit that I needed help. But for somebody else to realize, like, this woman needs help, like, she's living a life that she shouldn't be living, was just, like, amazing to me that other people could see it and I couldn't.
Now here you are 5 years later.
5 years
5
later.
years in recovery, employable, paying FICA, doing well. How do people look at you now? Your family, your kids, and other folks that knew your behaviors then?
I mean, I think they look at me differently because they just can't. I remember when I first started going around my sister again. She's really the only person in my family that I'm actually close to. So when I first started going around her again, she just couldn't believe that that was me because, like I said, I've learned so much stuff. I've learned how to react to situations, and I've learned how not to act out on my emotions. So for her to see me acting differently was a total, like, she was so surprised. And I remember her saying to me, like, is this really you? And I'm like, this is me. Like, this is who I am. Like, I want to be a better person.
Yeah, I think what happens sometimes is because you relapse so much in early recovery, and I'm sure that happened.
First time being clean ever.
Oh, well,
Really?
okay. So you just went into prison, got clean, came out, and started up
clean.
again, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
I've
that's
been in
basically
prison.
what-
I've got locked up 4 or 5 times, and the same day I got out, I was
You
right
then-
back to doing what I was doing.
Because what I was going to say, which happens, is that people will get clean for a short period and almost become religious about their being clean,
Yes.
if you know that story. And then they relapse.
They
And so their
relapse.
sisters and their parents say, oh,
Here you go
I
again.
got to hear it again, I got to hear it again. And in reality, eventually, in one of those experiences, you find recovery. But in your case, you just like to do drugs. And you
I
got
love
locked.
doing drugs. And
Okay.
honestly, if I could live life manageable and I knew how to, if there was a successful way, which there isn't, to get high, I would probably still be doing it.
Well, that's a very honest statement
Yes.
because I think most of us in recovery would say that if there was a way
do
to
it.
stay and be normal,
Yeah.
I think you would see a lot of people do that because the experience of drug addiction, although people who don't do drugs think it's such a negative thing. Who would put all those drugs inside them? What are you doing? You're nuts. But if you're on the other side of that equation,
Yeah.
there's a certain real camaraderie, a real positive feeling about drug use. I don't look back on drug use in a negative way now. I just look at it as a life experience that one has. And I don't necessarily see it as a negative thing. I don't think it would have put me here today if I didn't
I don't regret
go
anything.
through that. So, but what is it that happened when you were going in and out? Because this would be an interesting thought. What kept you going in and out? Was it just that you felt?
I mean, part of it was because, yes, I like to use. The other part was because I was so used to it. That was my lifestyle. That was all I knew. I was trying to hide a lot of pain that I was going through. As I said, I have 3 children.
Yeah.
I don't have any of them. They're all adopted. So I was trying to hide that pain of me
Were
leaving.
they adopted through?
My oldest daughter, she stayed with my mother until she was 5. My sister adopted her, so my sister is now her mother.
Okay.
And my other 2, I gave them up for adoption when they were born because I was still in my addiction and I knew that I couldn't take care of them. So it was hiding all of that pain.
Yeah.
Like I can remember, like I said, my daughter was with my mother until she was 5 and I lived with my mother. I can remember leaving and my daughter like begging me not to leave her. So just to hide all of that because I couldn't handle it. Like I couldn't handle the fact that I turned into the person who walks out on their kids.
Yeah.
I chose drugs over my children. And
Well,
it took me a
drug-
long time to admit that. Like at first it was like, no, I was doing what was best for them. But in all honesty, if they're looking at it for a while, I chose drugs over my children. So there was a lot of pain that I was trying to cover up. And when you do drugs, you cover that for a little bit. It comes back and that's why you keep doing it, to keep covering it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to deal with life on life's terms and to deal with the choices that you made in your addiction, like some of the things that you do.
When you were in your addiction and you were pregnant, we've talked a little bit about that at times with people who've come on the show. And I'm wondering, it would be interesting to hear from you as to when you were in your addiction and you were pregnant, what kind of thoughts did you have about the potential impact that might have had on your...
I knew in my mind, I knew I was hurting the baby, but I also wanted to forget that I was pregnant because I knew that I was going to give my child up for adoption and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I just didn't think I could stop using. Like I knew that I was harming the child. Thank God all of my children came out fine.
Great.
Like I said, my last child, I got locked up at like 6 months pregnant. So I didn't use for the last 3 months of being pregnant with him. But my second child and my first daughter, I stopped using because I was still young at that time. At the time that I got pregnant with her, I was only smoking weed and doing Klonopins. So I stopped using with her.
Klonopin's a minor was in the tranquilizing family for
Yeah.
people who might not know. but
Oh,
it's-
sorry.
It's like Valium, it's in
Yeah.
that family.
Yeah.
So I stopped. My second daughter, I will say the whole pregnancy, I was just, except for the time I got locked up, but the whole pregnancy, I was a mess. And that was just to hide the fact that this is what I turned my life into. Like, I
Yeah.
remember just hiding it from I tried to hide the pregnancy from everybody. I was so ashamed that I was still using while I was pregnant because I couldn't control myself and I couldn't stop.
So now, I kind of want to shift into that whole discussion. Your 3 kids, and you mentioned your daughter is with your sister.
Yes.
With 5 years in recovery, we applaud you for that. Have you had any urges, cravings, or desires? Point in case, have you seen? Are you communicating with your sister?
Yes, me and my sister have a great relationship.
So when you go see your sister and you see your biological daughter, what goes on with your emotions?
Honestly, at first it was very hard because I signed my rights over for her because I don't think there's any guarantee on recovery, and I can't put her through what I put her through.
Yeah.
Like, if God forbid if I ever did relapse, I can't put her through that again. So, and it was really hard to see my sister be a mother to my daughter because my daughter is like everything to me. Now it's gotten easier. Like I said, she calls my sister mom. She calls me Aunt Tiffany.
Okay.
My sister is her mother. She does everything for her.
Right.
She wakes up with her. She takes care of her.
Great.
And that's just something that it took like 2 years to be able to accept. Like, this is what it is and this is what it's going to be. I can't
Great.
change it.
Great.
I have to like I said before, I have to deal with the choices that I made in my addiction. And these are, my daughter's perfectly fine. She has a healthy life, a healthy family. Like, I just feel like it would be selfish of me to go in and try to pull her out of that.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it was very hard to hear
Yeah.
the child I gave birth to that called me mom for 5 years turn around and call my sister mom. And it's hard.
And I'm glad that you have, and I hope that the viewers understand this, that you have support mechanisms in place.
Yes.
You attend 12-step meetings, sponsorship, you're employable. 5 years, you've come a mighty long way.
Yes.
And to maintain stabilization and your thoughts. And so we applaud you. And I hope that many people who are viewing this, who are in that same situation, who've lost their kids due to their addiction, can understand that there's hope.
There is hope.
Yeah, so that's great,
Yes.
man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me, yes, we're all proud of you, and it's always a wonderful story to hear because it accents the whole concept of transformation and moving
Yeah.
from one. So you're to be applauded for that, definitely.
Thank you.
But I was wondering when you were thinking of recovery, and go through a little bit about how you got to your recovery. I know that involves working
Yes.
with the management company, but I was wondering, can you how did you make that transition? Because out there are a lot of people who need to make that transition.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Katherine will fill in on this.
Well, I can start and just talk about, forensic services, and we have 8 initiatives within forensic services that works with the different courts in the city. So one of the ways that we begin to look at individuals that, require or need our support is through the criminal justice system. So if there are individuals who are arrested in the city of Philadelphia, once they're screened by the Defenders Association, their attorney, it could be a court personnel, if they're identified with having some substance abuse issues, one of the things that they will do is get a referral. A referral for an assessment and evaluation. So this is the beginning phase. We don't look at just locking an individual away just because they committed a crime. We're really trying to look at what precipitated this crime. Is there anything that this individual needs to help support them? And substance abuse is one of those targeted issues. One of the reasons, forensic services was developed in the early 90s was because of that. The overcrowding in the prison system. It was a way to look at how do we provide supports through substance abuse treatment. So Tiffany came through Treatment Court. Treatment Court is a program that works with individuals. It's structured. There's requirements. There's accountability. I think Tiffany mentioned it was the first time she was accountable for her recovery. So the oversights with the courts and the judges and all these different initiatives for forensic intensive recovery, the IPP, intermediate punishment program,
And for
treatment
people
court.
out there, IPP means?
Intermediate punishment program.
Okay.
I
These
should
are
have been in that.
These are all initiatives within the Forensic Services Department that works in the different courts. You spoke of DUI. We have DUI. We also have Juvenile Treatment Court, Family Court as well. All that being said is we really look at, on that level of the legal aspects, the criminal justice side, how could we link Tiffany with the supports to help with her addiction?
Yeah.
Because if we didn't get her support for her addiction, she would have been in a cycle and spiraling out of control. So the assessors, the evaluators will look at what treatment programs within the city of Philadelphia could best benefit could she attend? And Interim House was identified through the supports of community behavioral health, also behavioral health special initiatives. These are the funders that really help individuals who have really no money to go to treatment. There's a certain eligibility and a requirement, but they look at what treatment program can we provide the services to. So that's how Tiffany got into treatment court, how she was able to learn the skills, the recovery supports, the sponsors, the CBT, the theories, the skills of really how to work her recovery on her own terms through Interim House.
Now you mentioned Interim House, and is it all female program? How long could you stay there? Tell us a little bit about that, your stay there, because listening to your story, many times relapsing, thinking, oh, I'm about to mess up again. Now here's your rescue. The FIR program comes in and says, we found an appropriate program for you. When you first got to Interim House, tell us a little bit about that stay there, the fear factor. Am I going to leave? What's going to happen? How long can I stay?
Well, when I first got there, I was going to leave. I had a whole plan in my head. I was going to leave. That was my plan. Interim house is it's home-like. So they make you feel at home. And, you know, being at home, there's like a backyard, and we go outside, and that's where the women smoke at. And I saw it, and I was like,
cigarettes, right?
Cigarettes, sorry, cigarettes, yes.
Of course.
I saw it, and I was like, I had this whole plan in my head that I was going to leave. That night, we had an H&I meeting, a hospitals and institutions meeting, and I actually sat down and listened because I had no other choice. And that's when, like you said, that's when I decided, like, I want recovery, because I can't tell you the exact words of what was said, but it's basically like, what are you doing with your life? Like, you're 22, 23 years old, and you're sitting in treatment.
Didn't you have, if I'm not mistaken, I forget the name of the person, but normally when they start in their like interim house and other programs, you're not left alone, and you can't go anywhere without a partner.
No.
Well, I forget what the title they call it, but I remember that when
a buddy
that you had to have, who was someone who had a significant amount of recovery at interim house.
Well,
and
with interim house,
knew
we go with staff.
Staff, okay. But I know that you couldn't go. You have to earn that privilege to walk around by yourself.
And kudos go out to Kathy Wellbanks and the rest of the staff over there. We've been dealing with interim house for at least 2 decades, as far as I'm concerned. And she's been keeping the program vibrant and alive. So
I mean,
speaks in value.
again, I don't want to. I keep going back to my age with this statement, but I remember when it first started. It was Don Ottenberg's wife out of Eagleview, that started interim house, because there were no women's programs at that time. This must have been in the late '60s or early '70s, and that's how it got started. And it stayed around and became as successful as it is, and eventually became under the management of.
Definitely. CBH, the Community Behavioral Health, under the Office of the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disabilities, they have several credible drug and alcohol treatment programs throughout the city. They also partner with some treatment programs outside of Philadelphia County. Case managers within the Forensic Intensive Program, we travel as far out as Lancaster, New Esther Clinica, and also Conewago. I always remember that because that's where Hershey Park is. You know, you can kind of see the roller coaster ride. But we do partner, so we will provide the case management services. So similar to the buddy, a case manager, a staff person would be working one-on-one with Tiffany, working with the participants in our program to really target and look at short-term and long-term hopes, wishes, and dreams, things that they may not have thought about while they were in their recovery. We also look at health and wellness. We talk about, you know, looking at linking them with their physical and their mental and also spiritual needs. So we begin to talk to them about that process.
Yeah, the public health concept.
The public health concept. The other interesting thing I think also is that we also don't just provide services to the individual, because we realize that they're part of a larger community. So if they need family support services, PHMC, we have, like I said, over 350 programs that if we need to look at early interventions for children. We also have PersonLink that works with individuals that have intellectual disabilities. So we're able to link the individuals with their needs as that individual is re-entering in the community to reintegrate. Because once the participant becomes well, then we can allow the family to become well. I like what Tiffany said about how even her sister struggled with how she was responding because it wasn't the same Tiffany. I was used to the old Tiffany. So families, we know, need that help and support as well. And that's what we're here for.
You know, in the field, we often get into arguments about whether forced therapy or counseling or whatever you want to call it. I mean, forced support is necessary. And I've often said, because we've, you know, as you know, I've worked in the DUI field a long time and got a lot of referrals into the practice originally from the drug court. Well, I think it wasn't called that. I think it was called the ARD court at the time.
Okay.
And I actually always felt that when you put a stipulation on it, it seemed to work. And you're a perfect example of the stipulation working. If there wasn't a stipulation, who knows, right? I mean, who knows?
I probably would have left.
Yeah. So what got you to stop, now to return to your story here? So here you are and you want to escape, and then you go to a meeting internally and things start to happen. Well, what started to happen?
I think I actually started to think about life. Like, instead of numbing everything, I actually started to think about where my life was going and what I was doing with my life. I mean, it didn't happen all at once. Even though I said that I wanted recovery, there was still a part of me that didn't want it, because I knew that if I did get recovery, I knew what came along with it. Then I would have to be a responsible adult, and I didn't know how to be a responsible adult. I mean, everything showed that I didn't know how to be a responsible adult. So it was just the fact that I forced myself, and then also with treatment court, because like I said, I was accountable to somebody. Like, if I left, what was going to happen? So just to be within treatment court was like a miracle for me, for myself, because I had to show up there every month, and I had to prove that I was still doing well. Like, I was still doing what I was supposed to be doing. So that played a big part in it, and then also just wanting a different life for myself. Like, I think it really hit me after I signed my rights over for my daughter, because I did that while at interim house. Like, this isn't the person I want to be. Like, I had dreams. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to be a cosmetologist. Like, I had all these dreams, and I don't know where I lost them at, but somewhere between the age of 13 and 20, something went wrong. Yeah,
you lost
something.
them in the drug use.
You lost them in the
Yes,
crack
I was
pipe.
Yeah,
trying
in the
to
cracks
escape.
of the pipe.
You lost
That's
them.
where you lost
Blew
them
it away.
Yeah, because they'll
Yeah.
let you just go wherever you how you want to go. I mean, that's what happens with it.
But-
So I started thinking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, the great thing about your story is, and this speaks a volume about being a resident at interim house. Now you're employed over there,
Yes.
and you know you're a recovery specialist, and that, you know what? Kudos go out to the city of Philadelphia and whoever came up with this concept, giving folks an opportunity to be in recovery and become employable. So you
Yes.
are beyond a vision of hope for the rest of the residents there who are newly coming in. And you said, well, I slept in your bed. Now,
Yes.
you follow me? Man.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's very significant, and I know you wanted to say something. I'll get right over to you in a
Come
second.
on, Kat.
But also appreciate the fact that what complements her service, in the sense of the positive service, is a lot of other kind of related services, more, traditional services, as well as maybe some brand new services. And your success is partly allowing them to be successful.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes, does that make
I
sense?
like where you're going.
Oh,
I like
okay.
where you're going with that.
It makes sense.
I did want to just add that sometimes we don't get a chance to see this 5-year success, that we see from Tiffany. Because in our program, we do have individuals that sometimes resume use of substances. They go back out there and they come through our programs multiple times. What we find is that sometimes the individual, they're not ready on that road of recovery.
Sometimes it takes 5 or 6 experiences before they connect. Even recovery is like that. If you look at recovery, the first 2 years, there's a lot of relapsing going on. It's kind of like normal. I mean, I hate to sound, but it's normal. And really, somewhere between the 2nd and the 5th year, if you look at the data, you start to see a solidification. So it's significant that she's 5 years in, because 5 years is a very key transition in recovery, because there's now a commitment to a new model of viewing the world, and just you now have the ability to look back and see things that you don't want to do anymore. That doesn't mean that the triggers aren't there, and we've talked before the show. We were talking about triggers. You walk down the street and you hear a certain music, or you put talcum powder on, and if you were snorting it, you see it all over your arm, and you want to like sniff your arm. I mean, there are all kind of crazy things that could happen to you.
Yeah.
The question is, can you turn around and look forward and go forward? And you're at a point now where, yes, the success rates are extremely high where you are now, but what you can't do is stop doing.
Yes.
Once you stop, what happens, it gets like, if you look, it's like stagnant water. The water gets infected.
Yes.
You have to look at your life more like a stream where you're in the flow going somewhere. Because as soon as you inhibit the flow, then you allow other contaminants to enter back into your life. Whether that would be, I tend to use the symbolism of stagnant water. So it is important that, and when we talked about that, you maybe continue your studies.
Yes.
And hopefully, we'll get organized around getting you to community college.
Yes.
Because you really need to keep that in front of you. But that's true of all of us, whether in recovery or not in recovery. When we stop evolving, we have serious trouble.
You need
So-
to set goals.
So and I'm glad you mentioned that point, because now you're at that, they say at 5 years your butt pop out. That's a term in recovery they use.
Yeah.
After 5 years clean. So then what are your goals and dreams now?
So I want to go to college. I've been trying to get into community college to work in the drug and alcohol field. I'm not sure what I want to study yet, but I know I want to be in the drug and alcohol field. Just from working at my job now, I love what I do, and I love to be around the women, and I love helping people. That's like my main goal right now.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of goals in life, I feel like, and honestly, and I could say this, every time I've set goals, I've achieved them because that's what, like, I'm a hard worker and I want to be somebody in life. And my main goal right now is to get into college, and I don't like to put too much on myself, but I'm thinking about maybe starting to save money to put a down payment on a house, but I'm not sure about that. So just get to college right now.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
That's
And you
awesome.
know, and it's funny because most people that work in this field of work, whether a clinician, director, therapist, counselor, recovery aide, we don't make a lot of money, you know. And most people chase a paycheck, but if you chase your passion, a paycheck will chase you.
Yes.
So you're on the right road, sis. You are definitely on the right road. And for the many women that are former residents of Interim House, or the many women that are currently looking at the show, you are a prime example of what just transition and hope is available. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you do represent the kind of direction we would love to see the field continue to grow in. I mean, we've often said that what we also don't have is enough people with baccalaureate degrees, for example, who have a specialty in behavioral health, and that, you know, we all have, you know, you're an MSW and I have my degree in social work. But the reality of life is that we don't really get trained in behavioral health in those programs. We have to get that somewhere else. So your interest is actually very compatible with community college's interest, in the sense that about half of the 700 and so students who are here in the behavioral health program are people in recovery. So you'll find a certain comfort zone here that you might not find, say, at another institution. And surely, as I mentioned to you, after the show, I'm going to walk you over to meet some people so that maybe they can help navigate
Yes.
through what can be, I don't want to say it too, Nick, because I'm on the faculty here and all, which can be a difficult place to navigate, especially if you're just starting out, because, you know, to them, you're just one of thousands of students. But
I like that you would say that, Doctor, as far as the paradigm shift between the old way of, you know, traditional treatment and recovery. I've learned so much from women like Tiffany, participants in the program, of just how to be a better clinician, how to be a better listener, because sometimes it's not about me. It's about the support that I can offer that individual. And every story that a participant comes to us with, we try to embrace, because there's a lesson. There's a lesson, and I hope the viewers can see that and understand that whatever you've been through, whatever your challenges are, you can overcome that. And you could be a testament to somebody else who's watching you. People who see Tiffany and who are working at the Interim House, who are coming in, newly individuals like Dawn, you know, who's getting ready to graduate from our program, can see, wow, here's someone who's been there, who's been through that, and look at her. Look at her, awesome. And I know your daughter and your children will be so proud of you, of the woman that you've become. It's just amazing.
How old are your children now?
9, 7, and my son will be 5.
Okay, so they're very young.
They're young, yes.
There's a whole life in front of you in sobriety with them, you know.
Yes.
Wow.
Although it's difficult sometimes to mend those fences. I will say this to you, that the struggle going forward as a mother is that I know that you're a good mother, but your children still see the old mother sometimes. And it'll take time, but what you have to do is be persistent and be kind and good as you are now, and they'll eventually come around. It's one of the negative things about doing family work in addiction, is that families sometimes don't want to do work.
No, not at all.
You know what I mean? Because they've had such a, like, oh God, here it goes again. I mean, I've heard this story, and here we go again. They're perfect with you now, but in 6 months, who knows where they'll be. So it's your consistent state of recovery and sobriety that will eventually bring your children around.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe they are already around. I mean, I don't know your real personal story about how you interact with your two children. But if I look at what I've seen historically, the road is a little awkward because of the experiences that were left with them. Now, that shouldn't deter you.
Me and my sister, we've been talking about family therapy because, of course, my oldest, she knows everything. Like, she knows that I am her mother. She knows that, even though it's so hard to explain. Like, right now, I'm not anymore. I gave birth to her. That's what I did. So my sister is her mother. So, but she knows that in the beginning, yes, I was. Like, she knows the truth. She knows all of that. So we've been talking about family therapy because there's going to come a time where we're going to have to explain it to her, like what happened. There's going to come a time, and I think about this a lot, I'm going to want a family. Like, I'm young. I'm going to want a life and a family, and to have to sit her down and explain to her, like, I just don't ever want her to think I didn't want her. So we've talked about family therapy, and we know it's going to be hard. I remember when I first started coming around again, I used to think my oldest, she would look at me like she hated me. Like, there was so much unsaid stuff between us. And even though she was only 5 when everything happened, I know that she knows. She makes comments sometimes about it, like, oh, you were in jail and you used to do drugs and stuff like that. So it's going to be hard once she gets older and she gets into her, like, teenage years and she starts questioning everything. So we've been talking about family therapy now as she's younger, because now that she's with my sister, she also has a sister and a brother, which are my nieces and my nephew. So it was a big change for everybody. My sister struggles a lot because my daughter has some emotional stuff, like emotional problems, behavioral problems. So my sister struggles a lot, and we're thinking about therapy to.
Okay.
Well, I would strongly suggest, yes.
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 Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole group of people in Jewish Family Service. There's all kind of family
PHMC,
programs.
we have
PHMC, I was just
family
gonna
therapy treatment program, and if their individual, has developmental and intellectual disabilities, we have programs that can link her with that as well.
Yeah, so there are resources you can utilize right away and get yourself started in a program that you've already had success with.
Yes.
So,
And not only that, people today are successful, or people who have networking ability and resources. They're right at your hands.
I do want to add too, Dr. Scoles, when you talk about the support, Derrick, you had mentioned that the recovery community in Philadelphia,
Yes.
it's alive and well.
It is.
I have never lived in a city that has so much recovery, education, resources, and emphasis. And I think that's one of the bright spots of being in Philadelphia. The other thing I hope viewers begin to look at also the stigma that's still associated with addiction and those in recovery.
Indeed. Thank
It's
you.
about decreasing the stigma, because Tiffany is more than her addiction.
Right.
And sometimes when people look at someone with a mental illness or a disability, we are more than that. And if we can begin to get that message out there to society, to be even challenge some of your own thoughts and ideas about what you thought someone who had bipolar or who was an addict, and we try not to use those terms anymore. It just really will help embrace this movement that we are people too, and we're always recovering from something.
Well, that you interesting you bring up the stigma, because there's the whole, Roland talks a lot, Roland
Yes, he
Lamb at the
does.
Department of Behavioral Health talks a lot about stigma. The problem I found with stigma is people never really tell you the truth about how they feel, and therefore the stigma always stays kind of hidden. Oh, they're a junkie, or they're this. And some institutions, when they hear, and I can think of one of the programs I'm working with right now, trying to get a new facility for themselves, is that part of the handicap that never is talked about is the fact that there's a lot of people in recovery that they would have to bring into their facility, and they have these built-in kind of stereotypes. Yes, information's important, but it's almost like you need almost emotional kind of groups to help them make a transition. But again, the news media doesn't help us.
It doesn't.
It doesn't help.
But one of the things that Dr. Evans has done, also Roland, they look at mental health first aid, which is a campaign that came into Philadelphia. I'm currently a mental health first aid instructor. And the course is really about increasing the awareness. We're not here to train or teach you how to diagnose someone, so you can't go out on the street and say, oh, that person has bipolar, or they're schizophrenic. But what it does is it allows you to begin to look at how can I provide support to this
Indeed.
individual until professional help can arrive. And sometimes, even when you're, after hours, you're having dinner, you're having social conversations at the bus stop, if somebody says something that's derogatory or negative or despairing around mental health or illness, that's your opportunity to begin to step up and say something and advocate. I can't change the whole world, but I can change and maybe influence the person I'm talking to.
Indeed.
And it's about that inspiring that notion of we are all human. And sometimes it may be that one person who says, you know what, I'm not going to use that terminology anymore. I'm going to find more information or resource on that.
Yeah, it's like the transition that we made from saying mental illness and saying mental health challenges.
Yes.
It's a language kind of change that's occurring. I would be remiss if I didn't say a couple little things about the college. We are one of the centers that does mental health first aid in the sense of what we do.
Yeah.
And we talk about Interim House, and there's a connection with Interim House and one of our vice presidents, Dr. Gay, who is on the board of directors of Interim House. So there's this kind of outreaching from the college onto boards. And just like at Horizon House, Dr. Hirsch is on that board. He's another VP. So we kind of like the idea of taking the community of community college and emphasizing community as well as college. So, and it's you're the kind of person that surely the behavioral health program wants to bring into the mainstream of education. I'm convinced that a good education is a healing process. It's actually very, very therapeutic. I think it increases your self-image. It makes you feel like
Your self-esteem.
yeah. I think it does all
I
of
love
those.
learning things. It's one of my, I like to learn new things and achieve new things. And so, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that is very, very important.
Education is key. One thing that we talked about earlier when Tiffany, you spoke about, playing those old tapes. Sometimes the education will allow you new information so you can create new tapes.
Yes.
And sometimes just learning about others in recovery and addiction, you're not alone. And sometimes when you're in an addiction, people will tell you negative things that aren't true.
Yeah, indeed.
And you have to realize I'm not that person. I'm more than that. So education is definitely a key. And we try to do that, at Public Health Institute. You can go on our website, check us out, at www.phmc.org.
Yes.
We have a wealth of information, just resources to create and sustain, again, healthy communities, since that's what we do in the city of Philadelphia.
Indeed. And you mentioned killing the stigma. We're putting a face and a voice on recovery.
That's right.
You are like the poster child for recovery in the city.
Well,
of
and
Philadelphia.
that's a significant transition from the old way in which we used to deal with the world. Remember, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous. See, this Faces of Recovery is the transition. And there are still some of the older gang, as I say, that really don't want to be involved with it. But it seems that the younger group, I mean under 50, to me, younger group.
I fall under that one.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay. And it seems that there's almost the faces of recovery are important and significant. And if I can go back to Recovery Walk, if you notice the first one, we did the original PR here. There was 300 people
300
at the
people.
college. And then it rose. You remember? I'm going back. I don't know how many years now. Must be.
Wow, that's like 8-9 years ago.
Yeah, 8-9 years ago. Now it's up to 13 or 20,000.
No, last year we had 25,000 folks in attendance at the Recovery Walk.
We were actually a sponsor last year, Forensic Services. We really embraced that, and we encourage our staff to bring their participants out, family members, to be able to see. It's a celebration.
Yes, it is.
Once you reach a certain point, sometimes you have to celebrate life.
True.
That I've made it through all of that. And that celebration, seeing the multitude of people, as you know, Derrick, that are just there, and the love that's in the air, it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's an awesome feeling, and not only for individuals in recovery, but the many folks that are still hiding behind the mask, to see that their doctor, their dentist, their lawyer, their former teachers are in recovery.
Yes.
So we're doing great work, and I look forward to the recovery walk every year. I'm challenging folks. Last year we had 25,000 people. Can we get 35,000 people?
We'll be there.
Well, I think two events that I think are particularly supportive of where you are and where you're going is the recovery walk and the recovery idol. We did a whole show
Yes.
on the idol in the sense that these alternative ways of healing, voice, music,
Folks need an opportunity.
yeah, an opportunity
Yeah,
is
folks
something
need, people in
one
recovery
need.
are very talented. Very talented.
And if I could just say, the addiction and the recovery piece is just a small piece of who they are.
True.
It's not who we are.
That's
You know,
right.
we're artists. You know, we're singers. We're coordinated movers and shakers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just a part. It's like someone living with diabetes.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have medication maintenance.
Yeah.
So when you look at someone in recovery, and we try to peel the layers to look at the holistic approach with that individual, and look at the skills that they do have and they can bring to the community and to the world. You know, if it's not the recovery community, it's their community, it's their families, it's their extended networks. And then hopefully this push will be a global effect, you know, and that's really how we can continue to have the movement and continue to move and
Yeah.
inspire
Well, I think
individuals.
your point is well taken. It would be nice if addictions could get to a point where it's treated like diabetes. You know, like the one that you,
Just
because
recently.
you know, it's the only disease, if you want to look at it, or disorder, behavioral disorder, however you want to conceptualize it, that when you tell someone they have it, they tell you they don't. If a doctor said, look, you're diabetic or you have hypertension, you usually say, oh, okay, doc, medication or what? When I used to say to people, well, you know, you're a problem drinker, you're alcoholic, you're a heroin addict. No, I'm not.
They don't want to admit it.
Nobody wants to. It's the one disease that they even stigmatize themselves about it. They will not, as a group, accept it. So people used to say to me, well, how do you know that someone is embracing recovery? Well, the first thing is, you know, they stop denying that they don't have the problem.
Yes.
They stop blaming other people about their whole life. They stop rationalizing it. And of course, they stop acting out. You made me do the drug again because you gave me all this stress.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you think about it, that if you can embrace those four concepts, admit that you're dealing, stop blaming other people, stop rationalizing, well, I only do a little drugs. I got a friend of mine that does a lot of drugs. I mean, you know, those kinds of things. You could actually start to heal yourself. But when they work together against you, it's a mountain to climb.
Yeah.
And for those that aren't at that point of admitting, you have programs like forensic intensive recovery.
Yeah.
Because if you're still acting out and finding yourself, you know, violating the laws of society, we will put you in a situation where you will become face to face with the reality of your choices and your addiction. And those are the programs like treatment court and accelerated misdemeanor court and forensic intensive recovery are in place to allow those individuals that opportunity to say, hey, this is where you're at. Here's some education.
Great work.
Yeah. So, Tiffany, we've been talking like in a kind of an intellectual way about recovery and stuff. From your perspective, I know you kind of agree, 'cause I've had conversations with you, but does it all make sense that this forced and the movement and trying to get you engaged and
It does
trying to
make
move
sense.
you in a direction that you don't want to go and things like that?
It does, and you know, I believe for some people it works. For some people, they act against it, and you know, I see it a lot. A lot of people, even though they are court stipulated, they come in and they leave. I think it's just about the individual and where they're at in their life and what they're going to put into it. Yeah.
Well, there are many paths to recovery, as
There
they
are
say.
many paths to
And
recovery.
we
and
hear that story all the time.
As you said, some people just aren't ready. Some people, they don't want to admit that they have a problem. And even if they can be in jail, they can be court stipulated to a program, if they're not ready to admit that they have a problem, they're not ready to accept help. So I think that's what it is, because FAR and treatment court and all of them, they're there to help you, but some people believe they're there against you.
If you're familiar with Michelle Alexander's work on you know, incarceration and the new Jim Crow and, you know, and all that, one of the things that comes out of that is that not much happening if you're an addict in prison. I mean, there's not a lot of support service. Now, I don't
But
want to
there
go too
is.
negative. I was going to say,
Yeah.
I don't want to go too negative because I know there are services in the prisons. But my question that I want to ask you, because I don't want to get 50 letters, emails
Right.
saying, "What do you mean?" I mean, I understand there's positive things that are happening in incarceration around drug and alcohol treatment, and because I don't want my friends to say, "Pat, you're misleading the public." I'm not saying that. Please, I don't mean that. But the point is, I wonder if what your experience was, and I've always felt that the environment dictates how successful one could possibly be, and that an incarceration environment is not necessarily the ideal space to be in around addiction. But I don't know. I mean, again, that's a personal thought. I wonder what your experience has been when you were incarcerated, and you were resistive, I understand, and you were just waiting to get out so you can do drugs according to what you told us. So, but what did they come after you in prison and say, "Hey, go to this meeting and do this and be in treatment"? And
Only the last time I was in prison. That's the only time that they did. And after I got clean, I wondered, I've got locked up this many times. Every time I was high, I was on drugs. 2 times I was pregnant. Like, why didn't nobody offer me help before? So I wouldn't say that they didn't help.
Okay.
I just believe when I was locked up, I didn't spend much time in the actual prison, like 1 or 2 weeks, a couple months. So I don't think they had enough time to give
To
me the
work
help
with
that I
you.
needed.
Oh,
And I
okay.
couldn't go on to B unit, which is the options unit, because I was
Options.
pregnant at the time. So I had to be on A unit. So, I mean,
and B unit had some of those services, I
yes,
assume. Yes.
yes. And I know that it worked for some people. So I guess it just depends.
I do know that at one time the college used to provide service like courses inside the prison, but that changed. I think it was with Ronald Reagan. He restricted us from
Yeah.
going into the prison, but one of the presidents changed the arrangement, so we had to stop. Well, I think we're pretty much coming to the end
Yeah.
today. It
So it's
went
good.
fairly quickly. But what I'd like to say, maybe if you wanted to say, give me 30 seconds about where you want to go, because I'm going to help you get there actually through the college. I'm going to
Nice.
get you into community college,
Okay.
one way or another. But I know that that's one of the things. And then maybe you can tell us a little bit about PHMC and how they can get in touch. You were good enough to mention it already, so
Yes.
you'll get a second time.
So where I want to go, I want to remain clean. I want to build more healthier relationship with my family. Of course, I want to get into college. I want to have a career. I want to stay in the drug and alcohol field. Eventually, I want a family. I want to own a home. So it's basically where I
Good.
want to go.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with your service, where would?
Yes, we have 2 websites. Public Health Management Corporation is about creating and sustaining healthy communities. In a nutshell, we can be found on the website at www.phmc.org. If you want specific detailed information about the Forensic Service Program, you can find us at www.firprogram.org. Once you hit the link for PHMC, there are over 350 programs within the city. If you have information, it's out there, it's there.
Yeah.
Wonderful program. I'm very
Thank
familiar with
you.
it. A very great program and great success, and I wish
Thank
you
you.
the best. And Derrick, I'll be seeing you, I'm sure.
As always.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I would like to thank my co-host, Rick Ford, and my 2 very special guests, Kathy Harvey and Tiffany David, for being here. I would also like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. You have been watching the Tapestry of Life on CCP TV, the Emmy-nominated educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I am Dr. Pascal Scoles, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services. See you next time.